You're not going to get people talking about this because of the implications and the denials and the like. I think this is a subject that we probably need to put more attention on and devote more attention towards over time. This is from the Financial Times. Here is the headline from the Financial Times. China tests new space capability with hypersonic missile. Launch in August of nuclear-capable rocket that circled the globe took U.S. intelligence by surprise. China tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile in August that circled the globe before speeding towards its target, demonstrating an advanced space capability that caught U.S. intelligence by surprise. 5 people familiar with the test said the Chinese military launched a rocket that carried a hypersonic glide vehicle, which flew through low-orbit space before cruising down towards its target. The missile missed its target by about 24 miles, according to 3 people briefed on the intelligence. But 2 said the test showed that China had made astounding progress on hypersonic weapons and was far more advanced than U.S. officials realized. The test has raised new questions about why the U.S. often underestimated China's military modernization. We have no idea how they did this, said a 4th person. Now, what are hypersonic vehicles? Let's first put this on the table. They are essentially missiles that orbit the Earth under their own momentum about 5 times the speed of sound. They're slower than ballistic missiles. But a ballistic missile, when it launches, follows a parabola. It follows an arc in the sky, like a rainbow that arcs across the sky. And based on how the missile takes off and the arc, the parabola by which it is flying, you can guess fairly accurately where that nuclear missile is going to land. It's different with a hypersonic suborbital glider. So the rockets, the nuclear warheads, are attached to a glider. A rocket launches it into space, and under its own power, under its own momentum, it orbits the Earth. Well, when it orbits the Earth and it's going in orbits around the Earth, it has lost now that parabola. You can no longer guess where it's going to land. And then suddenly, the glide vehicle, which has wings and flaps, comes through the atmosphere, and it steers. It banks to the left. It banks to the right. It dives. It goes up. And then it launches the rockets. And it does so rapidly, 5 times the speed of sound, with no launch warning available, because you're not seeing a ballistic missile via satellite. You're not seeing the ballistic missile. This thing is at the level of the satellite, so the satellites can't see it, and away it goes, and it launches its warheads. It helps them bypass missile defense systems. Now, I want to jump over to Klon Kitchen at the Dispatch, and I want you to read along with me here. The capabilities that China demonstrated in August are not unique. The United States, Russia, China, and other nations have been researching hypersonic missiles for quite some time. The U.S. has been pursuing these weapons since the early 2000s. The Pentagon will spend $4 billion on hypersonic R&D in 2022. In 2019, Russia deployed a regiment of hypersonic nuclear-capable missiles. American officials have known Beijing is pursuing hypersonics and putting real money into these efforts, but we didn't appreciate the progress they had made. The appeal of hypersonics is that they're more likely to overcome strategic missile defense systems and to hit their targets with very little warning. As I mentioned, nuclear-armed intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, actually fly faster than hypersonic missiles. ICBMs fly 15,000 miles per hour. Hypersonics fly 3,600 miles per hour. But ICBMs fly a parabolic trajectory. It makes it easy to predict and to intercept. Hypersonic glide vehicles, like the ones tested by China, are able to maneuver and change their flight path while going very, very fast. This makes them much more difficult to detect, to predict, and to intercept. Strap a thermonuclear warhead to one of these things and you got a problem. There's now reason to believe China may actually be leading the United States in the development of these weapons. While hypersonics are not the only way that China could deliver a nuclear warhead, They're a formidable threat in and of themselves and a potent reminder that American military superiority is not inevitable. Now, this is the other important part of this that we need to spend a few moments on. A growing consensus believes Western efforts to encourage democratic reforms in China through greater economic engagement has failed. Even more, there's a broader recognition that China's civil-military fusion and coercive economic, social, and political policies are becoming a direct threat to American citizens and interests. There remains a great debate whether the United States should view China as an ascendant power seeking to displace us, or a peaking power already beginning its inevitable decline. Both views, though, argue China is a growing military threat for the next 5 to 20 years, either because it may believe itself to be militarily superior to the United States, or because it senses that its opportunity to expand its influence is narrowing, and it must therefore secure whatever advantage it can get now. It doesn't really matter for our purposes whether China sees itself growing or declining. You need to understand that. They're a danger to us, to our interests. Now we must revisit something. The little green men who keep visiting us. We don't know that they're little green men. The U.S. military claims the Air Force has caught on film objects of some kind. They move rapidly. They can pivot 90 degrees. They can descend from the upper atmosphere to the ocean rapidly and ascend again. Some of the references of what has been observed do strike people as something that sounds very familiar to old ancient sightings that have never been explained. And people think maybe it is aliens. The more likely scenario is that the Chinese have leaped ahead of us. The more likely scenario is that China has developed drones capable of flying in ways that they couldn't if there was a human pilot, but since there's not, who cares? It can't be a coincidence that these sightings are happening at a lot of military installations around the world and pestering American sailors at sea. It can't be a coincidence that that's where they're seeing. Now, I will tell you this. I had Mike Pompeo on a while back. He had been the CIA director before becoming the Secretary of State, and he says that for reasons he can't go into, he does believe we're still technically ahead of China, and he does believe that there are some explanations for these vessels we have seen, but some of them still lack explanations because they seem to defy the laws of physics as we know them. And I take him at his word on that. I also have had conversations with people in the military who tell me that we are reporting the encounters, but that other countries, including China, are experiencing the encounters that we're experiencing. And if China is encountering the same objects, then perhaps it is not China. There is a problem, though, that has not been very widely reported. During the Obama and Trump years, towards the end of the Obama administration in particular was the height of it, there was an incursion into our military databases and intelligence databases from abroad. It appears to have been the Chinese and Iranians working in concert. Our spies around the world are being assassinated. That was the information hacked. They got into intelligence databases that were online and accessible behind firewalls that listed our spies abroad. There are various types of intelligence. Signal intelligence and human intelligence are the two most common. Signal intelligence, we eavesdrop on communications. Human intelligence, we actually have spies on the payroll. China and Iran appear to be murdering, assassinating our spies. So maybe China has leapt ahead, having killed our spies. We don't know. That seems very likely. But also, it seems very likely that China has a lot of other problems. If anything, my working theory is that the reason Xi Jinping, the president of China, is doing what he's doing militarily has a lot to do with trying to distract the domestic problems of China, trying to distract the people of China have become deeply nationalistic in the last decade or so. The Communist Party there has worked and indoctrinated kids in schools to become deeply nationalistic. And as they do so, it's easier to turn them on other countries. As the situation in China deteriorates, he blames the United States. In fact, hang on a second. I think Philip or Charlie 1 in show prep found me an article. Where is this? Yeah, Philip found this one. A Chinese propaganda film is the bestseller in China. It's set to become a box office phenomenon, the highest grossing film ever. The Battle of Lake Changjin, funded by the Chinese government, debuted on the eve of a national holiday, and it's about the defeat of the U.S. Army by China. It's a propagandistic film. It seems very clear where China is headed. But the question is, are they ascendant or are they descending and trying to stave off the inevitable? If you're just joining me, I've been talking about China. And is China in decline or ascendant? Either way, it makes China dangerous. My suspicion is I'm in the decline camp. I don't think China would be suppressing so many people if it was ascendant. I think there are internal problems, economic and social problems in China that make it harder for the Chinese Communist Party to maintain control. But there's another aspect to this we should talk about. American corporations have been investing a lot in China. I dare say, had American corporations invested as much in the United States as China, we wouldn't have the supply chain crisis we currently have. But to be fair, we would have much higher prices for goods and services than we do because we outsource so much to be made cheaply in China. It has come with trade-offs. Now listen, I don't have a problem with the free market. In fact, I'm a big advocate of the free market. It has improved the lives of billions of people. Capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than communism ever will. And we've been able to get goods cheaper, mass-produced goods cheaper, and of good quality typically, by relying on other countries to manufacture those goods. Gone are the days of an industrious United States where people are working in steel mills. That's just a reality. I'm sorry. Some people long for the good old days. They weren't as good as people mythologize them. At the same time, they raised costs. Things are cheaper now in part because of our offshoring. And I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem, however, with this. A lot of American companies didn't just get stuff manufactured in China for us. They want to be players in the Chinese market. Disney wants box office revenue from China. Disney wants to be there. The result is that Disney and its subsidiaries, ABC, ESPN, and the like, they have turned a blind eye to human rights abuses in China. They've turned a blind eye to persecution in China. They've turned a blind eye to concentration camps in China. And that's a problem. LinkedIn is the latest. LinkedIn is owned by, isn't LinkedIn owned by Microsoft now? I think so. Subsidiary company. And LinkedIn was having to block reporters in China because LinkedIn wanted access to the Chinese market. And LinkedIn has finally decided to scrap its China plans because of that. Facebook is another good example of this. Facebook is a company that made inroads into China, and then the Chinese demanded access to Facebook's data and servers, and Facebook refused. So China threw Facebook out of China. They were allowed into Hong Kong because Hong Kong had a different governance system. But as the Chinese have now cracked down on Hong Kong, Facebook's having to leave Hong Kong because they're not willing to give China access to their servers where the Chinese could then use Facebook's algorithms to spy on their people. and uncover the closet Christians and folks like that. Facebook had to bail. Apple is desperate to expand in China. Apple is a multi-trillion-dollar company at this point. And to keep making the money, because it's so big, if they want to keep growing, they've got to expand into China and India. In China, Apple has purged Quran and Bible apps from their app store because the Chinese government told them they had to. If you are in China using Apple products, you are forced to use servers that are housed in China where the Chinese communists can spy on people and have access to those servers. Nike is willing to lecture Americans on social justice and hire Colin Kaepernick, but Nike bends over backwards in China to placate the Chinese communists. The NBA and its all-stars want to lecture Americans on civil rights and then have no opinion on the Chinese ruthless persecution of its own people because they're making billions out of China. At some point, American companies have to pick. At some point, American companies are going to have to decide, am I American or am I not? You can't be globalist. You want to be globalist, but you can't be. Wisconsin Representative Mike Gallagher is on the Armed Services Committee in the House. He issued a statement. We know from a recent Washington Post report that Fithium, a Chinese company thought to be the maker of the nation's hypersonic missiles, used American-derived technology to power a military supercomputer that models hypersonic flight. As a result, U.S.-derived technology produced by TSMC, a Taiwan-based semiconductor company that uses American cutting-edge chip designs, still enables Fithium's malign work. This needs to change. American entities have a clear choice. They can side with our country or they can side with the genocidal communist regime that now threatens our cities. They can't do both, and it's time to choose. This is from Klon Kitchen again at the Dispatch. Microsoft's Beijing-based Research Asia Lab is the company's largest outside of the United States, and it's credited with being, quote, the single most important institution in the birth and growth of the Chinese AI ecosystem over the past 2 decades. Beijing's near total control of public and private research and data within its own borders, including every bit and byte of data generated by Western companies operating in China, means the Chinese military is able to leverage this information for its own ends. It's time for American companies to pick. Some of them are not going to pick us. Some of them are not. That's just the reality. Some of them are so woke. And let's be clear here, one of the things that's happening is some of these companies have so many progressives who have ingested hate for their own country, they would be happy to go with China. But American companies got to pick a side at this point.